What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Main Event Comedy Podcast. I'm Gene Jackson, along with Wes Sears, and of course, we're joined by Tyler Fitzgerald, and I believe in a little bit we may or may not be joined by Mr. Shane Knowles. Guys, how's it going?
Going good, man. I'm actually pissed off right now, but it's okay. Been playing a new UFC game. I decided to go online mode. Not a good idea. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Not a good idea. Bad times. Dude, it was so bad the guy was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, dude, really? Like, so bad.
You play the UFC games, Tyler?
I do, but I only do the stand-up mode because I am not smart enough to figure out the ground controls and wiggle the stick and push the button to do this and that. I can't do it. So, I play it like a boxing game.
I was decent at the earlier versions of it, and I don't even remember now how far back it was. A few years back, I got one and just absolutely sucked at it, and then I checked out on them, and then like one year on like Black Friday, like it was, I don't know, something stupid like $10 or something for the previous year's edition. I was like, how bad could it be? And I got it, and like you were just saying, like at that point, man, you had to push this and put the stick this way and hold your mouth this way and cover one eye and all this shit. And I was like, all right, I'm done with these UFC games. I don't even really watch UFC that much these days. So what am I doing? I don't know. I mean, I didn't know who 3/4 of the roster was when I got on there. I was like, I've never even heard of these people. Like, it's crazy because like me and my little brother started out watching UFC from day one, like the VHS tapes at the video store when it was a hardcore, no rules, just like, it was like this guy who is a, jiu-jitsu fighter, and this guy who has trained in, this, that, and then it was like this guy who's just a mechanic from San Bernardino that fights in the parking lot, and, it's just anything goes. And, to see what it grew into, but I kind of checked out on it after Brock left somewhere in there, and my dad started watching it like religiously, and like to this day, like I'll go home and he's like, "Man, did you see that fight between so and so and so and so?" I'm like, "I don't even know who that is."
My dad's
and he just rattles off all their names. He'll tell you their record. Oh yeah, he's 42-2 and blah blah blah. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But glad somebody enjoys it. But coming off a fun night last night. We've been hyping it up here on the podcast for a few weeks now. Last night we had our main event comedy show at Atomic Johnny's. There's a little picture of post game there up on the stage with, of course, there you see Wes and Shane Knowles and Delbert Jenkins, myself, and there in the middle you got David Lynham, and to the left of Wes from where we're sitting, to the right of Wes in that picture, is Chase Moten, and the other side of him is Keenan Worthington. And a good time last night, man. Everybody did really well, and I would say, some people are saying it's the best show we've ever done. I don't know. I thought last month's show was pretty strong with James Etchison, but I certainly can't argue that, the shows are getting better and better each time. What are your thoughts, Wes?
Absolutely. I know last month we had a bigger crowd, but here's the thing about the crowd last night. The crowd last night, we did, it wasn't sold out. It wasn't just full, but dude, they were into it. Like they were absolutely into what everybody was saying. There was people, oh, look at me. There's some people, that were even like getting involved, and I think that's what helped me at one point. Cause I know somebody was saying something to me. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I just fed off of it. And said something that was not even, on script, if you will. But, it worked. It got a laugh. It got a pop, if you will. And, dude, I thought last night was fantastic. Everybody did a good job. I thought main event came in hard. Deborah Jenkins, I love the fact that he comes in first every time because he just sets it, so this is what you're going to get, it could go this way or this way from the rest of the night, and we have a good formula.
I
And I
love
think,
it, man, because he loves starting the show off, and
mhm.
I don't, even as the host. But he doesn't miss. Like, every time he'll be like, "Oh man, I ain't feeling tonight." I don't know. These folks probably ain't gonna like none of this shit. And then he comes on stage with that same thing, like, his opening joke always kind of references that. And I know everybody's thinking like, "Oh, what are we fixing to get?" And then he brings it every time. And Atomic Johnny's especially, like, he gets a good reaction everywhere. But like, I've gone back because I edit all the videos, and like his sets, the Atomic Johnnies, like have always done better than anywhere else we've been. So yeah, like you say, it's always a good way to kick it off. And but yeah, I was just gonna say, you had a good set last night, and that's what I really loved is a couple of the riffs in there where people said something, and then you were right on it, and you reacted, and then that got a big laugh. Sometimes that got a bigger laugh than the joke, which is always always feels good because, like you said, it's off off script for
Mhm.
so much. But I want to point out here in the comments here, our friend Johnny Dotson says the King Superstar is watching, and I wish you guys much success. Well, Johnny, we appreciate that, man, and we wish you success as well. And I know you've had surgery recently and had some health issues, so we wish you a speedy recovery from that. And maybe I can get you on one of my other wrestling podcasts, and we can talk about some of what's going on over there in Memphis and your new Mid South television networks, things they got going on over there. But real quickly, I'm trying not to move off of last night in case Knowles pops up because I know he was wanting to talk about this, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this. But we will be back at Atomic Johnny's on April 27th. And I have been in contact with a couple of real funny guys today that David Lynham kind of let me know about. I've seen one of the guys in action. I know he's funny, and another guy that just based on his performance in some contests and things that I know of, I know he's gonna be rock solid too. So I'll be announcing those guys pretty soon because I'm working on one more, and we'll be back there in April. But yeah, like I say, it wasn't the biggest crowd, but it was a really good crowd as far as, like you said, laughing, giving feedback, and being in it. Like there was at no point 2 or 3 shows ago, it felt like the crowd, half the front end of the house was watching, the people in the bar was really just indifferent, but everybody was in it last night, so that was really cool. So again, we appreciate those guys coming out. Our old friend Keenan, he had a great set and some things that I haven't seen and heard from him. So, and our buddy Chase that was in the main event comedy championship was there, and just a fun night, man. So if you ever hear we're when we're coming to town, whether it's there in Gadsden or we're gonna start meandering out some other places, we hope. Uh, Come check it out. We hope you have a good time. It seems like everybody is that's been going. So we may circle back around to that and let Shane Knowles give his thoughts on that. But we're going to talk a little bit of wrestling news here on the front end. I'm trying to decide where I want to start. I didn't get on here in time to help producer Smokey upload pictures tonight, so we don't have a lot of pictures besides those couple from the show. But he did make us some headlines. So let's just, I don't know, Goldberg's mad as usual. So Goldberg made a few headlines this week as he was complaining on some podcast that Bret Hart hasn't forgiven him, and damn Bret Hart, he can't apologize. There's only so many times he can apologize for ending Bret's career and ruining his life and cutting his Hall of Fame career short by several years. And because of the fact that Bret's still not happy about it, Goldberg's now pissed. He even ended his quote as saying, "I still want to kill him." I'm like, what do you mean still? Like, so were you trying to kill him at Starrcade '99, and now you want to finish the job? Like, you've always said it was an accident. Now it says you still want to kill him. So I don't know. I was confused by that. Let's take that one first, and then we'll move to his other controversial statement that he said. But what do you guys take on the fact that he's bitter because Bret Hart hasn't forgiven him?
It's on par with Goldberg. I think he just seems bitter nowadays. He's like the old man Ryback in a way. So it's not surprising at all. But yeah, I mean he almost. I mean he what ended Bret Hart. He almost could have ended the Undertaker.
He
Uh,
almost put the Undertaker in a wheelchair. I mean,
He
holy,
almost
that is
rested peace.
exactly. That's one of the scariest things I've ever seen. And I was watching some bits and pieces of Undertaker's new podcast, and in a couple of different times he references that as almost dying in the ring. So I'm guessing that on some level, Mark Calloway probably hasn't forgiven old Goldberg either. Speaking of Goldberg, hold on a second here. There he is,
Oh
Mr.
shit!
Knowles.
Put my hand through the glass and shred a few tendons there.
So we'll circle back around to the comedy show here in a little bit. We talked about that for a minute on the front end, but right now we were digging into this week's wrestling news, and our first headline, I'll put it up there so you can see it. Goldberg is mad, as usual. So the first part of that, we were starting with the fact that I guess Goldberg was on a podcast of some sort, and basically was complaining that Bret Hart is still bitter that Goldberg ended his career, cut his career short by many years, and ruined his life in many ways. But the fact that Bret Hart hasn't forgiven him and still blames him, he's angry about it. He's pissed off, and throughout that interview, if you look at it, like when WWE when they're putting him in there and he's beating Bray Wyatt for the WWE title and he's crippling the Undertaker in Saudi Arabia or whatever, WWE's great. Vince McMahon's a good dude. But then when the push stops, now all of a sudden WWE's terrible and they're a horrible company to work for and they never did him right and all that sort of thing. So we just had kind of went around the room there, and Wes and Tyler had kind of give their thoughts, at least on the Bret Hart aspect. What's your take on Goldberg and specifically this whole Bret Hart, issue, if you will?
Well, even if Goldberg is contrite, one thing I would ask, what took you so long? I mean, this happened over 2 decades ago. I don't think Brett just now started critiquing Goldberg. Finally, in the last year or so, I've seen Goldberg say, "Hey, man, I said I'm sorry." But and if he is contrite, I can also see Brett's aspect of this of like, "Oh, I'm glad you're sorry, but guess what? I still suffer through every day when I wake
Yeah.
up and when I go to bed." Um, Here's my thought on it, and I'm not going to speak for Bret Hart here, but it's just a thought. I think he didn't like the fact that Goldberg wasn't trained and didn't take it seriously. But if Goldberg had went on in his career and gotten better, I think he might have could have lived with it. But I think all of us could say those last few matches in WWE, he never 3 moves. I
Dude, he
mean,
was
that's it.
too green. He was absolutely way too green.
Well, I mean, they gave him that mega push, and they're like, well, all right, we're going to put him on TV. We're going to put him over on everybody. We're going to give him this mega push because he's bald and got a goatee, and he kind of looks like Steve Austin, who's just killing it over on the USA Network.
Mhm.
But he can't work, and we don't have time to train him, and we really don't have anybody to do it. So we're just going to let him have 30-second, 40-second spear jackhammer matches for the next year. We'll run up this absurd win streak. And they did that, and that worked. It got over, man. I had friends that just loved that dude. I mean, they absolutely just ate his ass up. And eventually you came to a point where like, all right, well, this guy's got to start having some. Regal tried to have one with him a little sooner than he was ready for. That's a famous story. That Regal now doesn't really like to comment on. But
That's my favorite
then
Goldberg match.
yeah, it's oh my gosh, it was. I remember watching it because I mean, me and my buddies, we watched Raw and Nitro every week as it was happening, and we had watched the Goldberg streak unfold. Spear jackhammer, spear jackhammer, spear
Hmm.
jackhammer, lather, rinse, repeat, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, he's in here with Regal. Man, they're fixing to squash Regal. This sucks. And then next thing you know, Regal's got him down. He's tying him in a knot. It was like, what? And then, we got right back to the, spear jackhammer, spear jackhammer. But what's crazy is the first and perhaps one of the only guys to have a decent match with Bill Goldberg. Was the guy who broke into the business as a wrestler, like nearly at my age as I sit here right now, like 44, 5, 6, something like that. Diamond Dallas Page was the first guy who drug a decent match at him, and you're like, well, okay, maybe there's potential here. And from that point on, it was always just a matter of who he was in there with, because there were a few people that drug passable matches out of him, and there were some people that got their heads kicked in and ended up, retired. But his attitude's always been rotten. Like he always seems to think that he was entitled to all this, that people should have never been jealous of him. It wasn't his fault that his manager got him a good deal, and he was marketable. But in WWE, he come in with all that fanfare and that fizzled out pretty quick, and then he was bitter about that for years. And I'll never forget when they brought him back for that match with Lesnar at the Survivor Series. And what was that, 16? Somewhere in there. I remember me and my buddy Neil Taylor was doing a podcast at the time, kind of like what we're doing now. We were just kind of talking about like wrestling headlines and stuff. And I was like, Goldberg was the shits in his prime. He's now been out of the business for almost 15 years, whatever it had been at the time, almost 20. I said, he's going to come back and wrestle now? I said, he was never good to start with. Like, okay, I guess Lesnar's just going to squash him. Let's hope. And then they did that deal where he spears and jackhammers Lesnar and beats him in so many seconds. I don't know that there's ever been a wrestling match that has ever made me so mad. I mean, and me being somebody who had somewhat been in the business, I like a couple of my buddies like, oh, you're being a mark. I'm like, no. Fuck that. That's ridiculous. I was so pissed off. And then, he ended up having their WrestleMania match they had was okay, I guess, for what it was. It was surprising, but that whole run, I didn't like any of his second round. I didn't like his first round in WWE, obviously, but I didn't like his second round either. I don't know. Any other thoughts on Goldberg? Well, okay, before we get to that, let's go ahead and mix this in. The other thing that he complained about was he basically said, and they had some Japanese chick break my streak, break my, the amount of his record. Very dismissive of Asuka, who's become a very big star there and was a big star before she got there as far as wrestling in Japan and things like that. And in today's current climate of equality and women's revolution, blah, 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 I'm sure that's definitely not going to win him any fans or any popularity amongst anyone in society to go on and be like, hey, let a Japanese woman break my streak, So it's just more shit to the pile when it comes to Goldberg. So anyway, we'll start with Wes and work our way around. What's everybody's final thoughts on old Goldberg?
Well, I mean, I'm like you. So, he comes into, WWE, fights Hollywood Rock, basically buries Hollywood Rock, and then has one of the worst WrestleMania matches that nobody wanted with Lesnar. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think Stone Cold was even the guest referee just to make it entertaining.
Yes.
Because nobody wanted it, And then
nobody wanted it, and they knew both of them were leaving.
Exactly. Then the second time, he just buries Brock Lesnar, and we're like, okay, why is he? He has no reason to bitch, dude, because they gave him just that ladder of success. In my opinion, that was not. I don't think it should have been him. I mean, I get it in the early, mid 90s with WCW battling against WWE. They got Stone Cold over there. He looks kind of like him. Let's see what happens. He is athletic, but dude, he has no reason to bitch because in ring and even promo, you're next. Okay, great. That's all you got. He wasn't trained. He should be lucky and thankful for the career he had instead of being like this. There's a part of me that I'm like, Ryback, that's the same shit for you, dude. You almost killed CM Punk.
Ryback just didn't have the NFL pedigree, and
that's it.
A company like WCW that got behind him and gave him the push. Because I mean, if Goldberg would have started in WWE, he never would have got to where he got. But WCW was desperate, looking for a hit, and they pushed him, and he was in the right place at the right time. One more thing to add to that before we move to Tyler. One of the things that really disgusted me about that squash on Lesnar is I was equally, I didn't say equally, but I was upset when Lesnar beat Undertaker and broke and ended the streak, because it was like, Brock doesn't need this. Like, of all the people that could have got a rub from beating Taker, Brock doesn't need it. But okay, we're making Brock the baddest dude of all time. Fair enough. And then he gets squashed in just a few seconds by Goldberg, which is essentially, to me, is the same as if you had brought Goldberg to WrestleMania and had him squash Undertaker to end the streak. So there's that element of it as well. Tyler.
Well, all that to say, aren't we glad Vince McMahon is no longer in charge? Because you can't tell me that that's not all that new Goldberg stuff when they brought him back and they had him running through Brock Lesnar, The Fiend. I think he had a match with was it Samoa Joe maybe or something.
Yeah.
All the people that we thought, like, man, this guy just needs that push. It'd be great to see him get that title run, and then you just watch him get squashed by Goldberg, and it was like the most aggravating way to piss us off. But that's Vince. I definitely think that was a Vince call. So I don't think that would happen necessarily in modern day WWE. But yeah, like Wes said, I mean, he ought to be lucky that he was even brought back and even given the rub that he was. And I mean, I don't really think the fans ever really got behind him much. We kind of got sick of it quick. And he was raw, injuring people. He was a little bit rough, to say the least. He definitely was not a technical guy. So, yeah, I guess for his talent level and what he can do, I thought he had a fine career. But, and I also don't know. I mean, you're getting upset about the streak and all of that, but like, that happened in WCW, so he can still have that. He can still have that in WCW.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he didn't have the longest streak in WWE. He had the longest streak in WCW. Nobody can ever break that because it's gone.
Yeah.
Do you know when he drives by a hospital, he actually points at the ambulance and he goes, "You're next," because that's when he's letting them know, like, you're next to go pick up my next victim, because he hurts people.
Welcome, J-Dubs.
Hey.
Glad you made it. And before Knowles chimes in, let's just remind everybody to circle back to last week. Goldberg's also a Hall of Famer. So when you start asking that, what does it take to be a Hall of Famer? I don't know. Shane?
Well, undeniable that Goldberg from 1997 through 1999 had a 2-year stretch, pretty much unrivaled by a lot of people. Top tier when you look at crowd reactions, merch sold, household name notoriety. I mean, I remember going to malls in 1998. You would see a Goldberg shirt at Martin's or Hibbett's. That's when you know you're over, brother. But ever since that 2-year stretch, 97 to 99, it has been diminishing returns in any way that he has returned in professional wrestling. And, I remember that brief time where their roads would have crossed a little bit in 98 when the Ultimate Warrior came and did the program with Hogan, and I had buddies in college going, "Oh my God, can you imagine if Hogan and Goldberg wrestled?" And I'm like, now can you imagine how thankful we are they didn't?
Yeah, Warrior versus Goldberg would have been...
Who's leading that match?
The stuff of nightmares. I mean, because Warrior Hogan without Pat Patterson laying out the match was wretched. Only imagine Warrior and Goldberg with the blind leading the blind. Holy. Hang on. I don't think J-Dubs was with us last week, because he says unforgettable runs, massive runs, merch sales, and transcendence of the sport makes a Hall of Famer. Okay, Jay, I agree with that, except Coco Beware's in the Hall of Fame, and he didn't do any of that shit. So that all goes out the window. That was half what we talked about last week. So sorry, man. I agree with that, but that's the argument is, yeah, in theory, that's what it should be, but clearly it's not based on
Queen Charmel. Queen Charmel did all that, too.
Yeah, Queen Charmel did not have an unforgettable run, a massive run. She didn't sell merch, and she did not transcend the sport. There's a reason he's in. I get what you're putting down there. We'll leave that alone.
I mean, not to stay on
Because
this,
Charmel has a little of the same thing going on.
not to stay on this topic for too long, but I do think this might be controversial, but Goldberg to me is a Hall of Famer by my standards. By what he did, that run, like Shane said, was pretty unrivaled. And you can say that was in WCW, but I guess WCW is WWE now. So I mean, they own it all. So I do think.
I mean, I will say Goldberg sold more tickets, sold more pay-per-views, and drew more money than Coco or any of the guys that were questioning. So there is that. And then that gets into a topic that we're going to kind of cover on the comedy front later what's really more important, how much money they drew or how good of a wrestler they are. And that's a whole other can of worms that we may tackle at another time, but that's going to take us down another completely different rabbit hole that would have us here for a while. But if you ask me, the absolute peak of Goldberg's career was the Georgia Dome. He beats Scott Hall. He beats Hollywood Hogan. He's the champion. And that's kind of like the payoff to the street storyline as far as I'm concerned. And it was all downhill from there. Like, even though the streak went on a little longer and all that, but like the Kevin Nash Starrcade debacle, how they beat him, and like it was just a steady plummet from there till you get to the Russo punching out the limo windows and all that.
I wanted to say I was there for that Dome show, and it's the only wrestling show ever that when he went over with a 1, 2, 3, people beside me could have been screaming the building's on fire right in my. I couldn't hear. It was that loud, the toilet paper. Because you remember, and I'm going down a little different hole here, but they didn't announce that Hogan Goldberg match was going to take place until Thunder, like 4 days prior.
Yeah.
So then they moved so many tickets in 72, 96 hours. And by the way, for WCW Tuesday, man, March 26th, that's the 23-year anniversary of the final WCW Monday Nitro.
Wow, that's wild. But yeah, I had a lot of friends that was at that Nitro, and I remember watching it live. And we can sit here in 2024 and say the guy wasn't a good worker, and he's may or may not be a piece of shit as a person. But the fact of the matter is, there was nobody more over than him. You go watch that Nitro, and the Georgia Dome was packed with people who thought he was just the best thing ever. So, yeah, to Tyler's point, that probably does earn him, a spot in the Hall of Fame, or at least, as he just pointed out, in the Tyler Fitzgerald Hall of Fame, he's there. Chris Benoit probably is too, but I'm not going to ask because I don't want to get pissed off this early in the show.
That's Wes's guy.
That's the Wes Sears Hall of Fame. You got
Wes is a Chris Benoit.
I'm with you.
It's just Chris Benoit and Cody in there by themselves, hanging out, killing it. So to
Trying
speak.
to finish your story.
Yeah, just finish it. Benoit's like, I'll finish their story.
Coco Beware's got his own wing in the Hall of Fame.
That's right. So, all right. So moving on from Goldberg, that was nearly 30 minutes. So we're going to have to try to rein these in.
We went longer than all his matches combined in his career. I'm talking about.
That's right. We talked about him longer on the podcast than all of his matches except for that one. All right. So Goldberg complains. I guess we'll hit this. This surely to God, this topic can't be that long. So we all seen this today. If you're on social media, if you have Facebook, we all saw the video with Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax. Now we talked about on this very show a few weeks ago how Rhea Ripley performed a minor miracle by having a good match with Nia Jax on pay-per-view at the Elimination Chamber. Wes, describe to the folks at home who may have not seen this video what we're referring to and what went down, so to speak.
Okay, so basically, Nia Jax is in the corner, just laying, and Rhea just pulls up the shorts just a little bit, making it a wedge.
Enough.
Exactly, and just cheeks are just there, and starts running backwards, and gives Nia the stank face, is what I like to call it. Not the stink face. No, this is stank face. And just, and Twitter. Oh, I'm sorry, X, if you will. X is broken. It's all over Facebook. I mean, I saw Snapchat stories on people's, and it wasn't even like they were there. They were just like posting it on their story, and I was like, "Good Lord!" Like, she
there's
broke
a
the
longer
internet.
there's a longer version of that video. It starts with Nia Jax gets her down in the corner, and she is threatening to give Ripley the steak face. She goes to back
shit.
up. Ripley kicks her in the ass with both feet and knocks Nia down face first in the mat. Rhea then shoots her in the corner. Nia takes the ass bump in the corner, and then we pick up right from where you described. And
Broke the internet.
Yeah, video got a lot of bookmarks quick.
Yes, and there's hundreds upon hundreds of comments, and every one of them of dudes saying, like, where do I sign up for this? And, why wasn't it me? And all sorts of things such as that. Shane, I feel like you probably got a comment on this. Where are you at on this?
I had not heard of it until you and Wes spoke of it earlier, so I had to go down the Google rabbit hole, and I do make a lot of memes, so I'm trying to stretch into the video memes. Tell me if you'd like this one. I would love to just have her doing the stank face, as Wes calls it, with the alternating between Batista and Triple H. Give me what I want. I'll tell you what I want. As she's repeatedly slamming
Dolph Ziggler
and denying Jax.
That's perfect. That is perfect. Yeah, that was. I mean, so. Are we thinking maybe that gets her in the Hall of Fame? Is that?
Well, here's a question I have, maybe off topic here. How do I say this? She's not arguably, I think, the biggest female star they have right now. Would you put Rhea Ripley in the top 4 biggest stars the company has? Period.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think she surpassed Charlotte Flair as the biggest women's star quite a while back, and is probably getting close to lapping her at this point, just strictly because of all the injuries that Charlotte's suffered and time away for plastic surgery and whatever the hell it is she's doing. But yeah, like I said, now she's up in the upper echelon of being, top 4 or 5 stars in the entire company. It didn't feel out of place for her to main event that pay-per-view. And there was a time where, you're like, all right, they're putting the women on last because we're going to make a statement, but there had already been a lot better matches. But I mean, honestly, even including the chamber match, I was like, okay, especially being in Australia. And that was, because I mean, she got a Steve Austin or babyface rock pop when she come out there. People were, losing their minds. So
I'd argue she's top 3, probably after Roman and Cody. Well, Cody first, Roman second. I'd still think Roman, still a big star. I'd say she's.
Oh, we know you're just being nice. Roman's number 1 in your heart at the very least, but I'm sure off screen. I'm sure as soon as the show ends tonight, he's like, I tried to babyface for those guys and say Roman's number 2, but come on,
like he's like, fuck Cody.
They're not ancient, but both Roman and Cody are 38. Can you believe Rhea's still only 27?
I know. I mean, crazy. So much, so much time to go with her. So
I hope she has equals for her the next couple of years up to her level.
That's going to be the catch. We've talked about it on here. I'm not a big Becky Lynch fan. I hate the idea of her calling herself the man, but I think it's really going to be telling when they have the WrestleMania match that she's Rhea's several levels above Becky Lynch. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Becky rises to the occasion and proves me wrong. But
we got Jade Cargill. We got Jade in the wings. I mean, that would be a fun feud later on down the road, I think. Jade is still a little raw though. She still has a ways to go, but
that's what they're doing with Jade. I mean, at least they're having her in the training facility. We had her at Rumble. We got a little taste, and now, I mean, she's been working. So
they're giving you.
They're doing what they should have done with Goldberg, because she was compared to AEW's Goldberg with the streak, very limited. They put her right back at NXT, give us a little tease at the Rumble, and then we'll get it when it's right. So I love it.
Because WWE learned their lesson from the Goldberg experiment. They saw like you said, it was a perfect parallel. They just pushed Goldberg to the moon. WWE brought him in based on his reputation, and he crashed and burned. And so with Jade, they're like, we'll put her out there that will build interest, put her in the Rumble where she can kind of be protected. But then we're going to make sure she's ready to go before we, put her in prime time. And we're gonna let Tyler field this question. J Dubs has a question here. It says, "Am I the only one that thinks Roman's face has been looking more and more sunken in? Is he sick again?" Now you know him better than we do, Tyler. Is Roman sick again? Is he okay?
No, no, I don't think so. I think
Right.
he's. I haven't noticed any difference. I haven't noticed any difference with Roman. Still on the top of his game to me.
All right, Jay.
Number
There you
one.
have it from our resident Roman Reigns expert and super fan, Tyler. Reigns is a-okay. So don't you worry about. Don't you worry about our boy, the tribal chief. Now, before we get to that, because there's a lot to talk about there. We'll touch on AEW. We always try to touch on a little bit of AEW. So this week, Adam Copeland and Okada win gold. Adam Copeland wins the TNT title from his former partner slash brother, Christian Cage, and Okada beat Eddie Kingston for the Continental title. And I'm confused about this. I was thinking that was the international title, but then somebody corrected me that it's called the Continental title. And at some point, it was 3 belts. It was a triple crown with maybe the international title was included at some point, but then there was some Japanese title, and then like the Ring of Honor TV title, I think, was included. But then when Okada won it, now Tony Khan has announced we've separated the titles, and now the Continental title is just its own thing.
I can't.
It's so convoluted. It's like some kid's fantasy booking on a message board somewhere.
It's Tony's
And he
fantasy
expects
book.
somebody to give a shit about any of that. Oh, man. J Dubs is wanting to pick a fight with Tyler tonight. Like, I got a feeling we're going to have a heated rant.
Man, I'm trying to
The
be the
only
face
saving
today.
grace is he misspelled queef, so maybe Tyler will give him a pass because
No,
I don't know
I
what
was a
quiet
heel
is.
last week. I'm trying
Hey,
to be
Tyler's trying
funny.
to turn babyface this week. He was
can
the
I
Rock
can I
last
share
week.
a quick Roman Reigns story that may be inappropriate? I'll let you guys be the judge.
All right, at your own risk.
Now it was in what was this, February of 2017 or 2018? This is the last Raw that I went to in Atlanta, where they had the Ric Flair, the 70th birthday party bash. Where Steamboat, Sting, all that was brought out. But that was the very show where Roman Reigns came out. Everything got real quiet, and he announced to the live crowd as well as on television that he had leukemia. And guys, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at the condition. I'm laughing at the audacity. When that whole 18,000 seat arena is dead quiet, leukemia, one guy down at ringside, I'm in the upper deck, yells out, "You still suck!" And there was like 400 or 500, including me, that snickered. I was like, I cannot believe that just happened. The audacity, but I was like, some people just wow.
I mean,
I was like,
it's kind of old school. I mean, I know you're like me. You've listened to a lot of these, shoot interviews with guys like Cornette and different ones where, like, back in the olden days, like, say in the Memphis territory, Sam Bass, hated heel manager of the heel Jerry Lawler at the time, dies in a car wreck. They announced to the crowd, Sam Bass will not be here tonight because he passed away in a car wreck, and they popped. Like, they had a standing ovation because this guy died in a car wreck because people really believed then, and they really thought he was a terrible guy, which is just crazy to think about now. But so, I guess that's kind of an old school moment where some guy's like, I don't care if he's got leukemia, he's a piece of shit. You suck. Um, so good on Roman for having heat. It's ironic because, like, when they wanted when they wanted him to be super babyface, everybody hated him. Now they want him to be the mega heel, and people are starting to love him. Like, I think we talked about this before. I think they're going to have to eventually turn him babyface because even though they're booing some of the stuff he says and does, you still get the whole arena standing up, holding up the finger. So
they're reacting to him now like they didn't. It was just go away heat during that babyface shove
I don't
him in
know.
the
It's
face
it's
run.
almost like in the era of smart fans, they're having to find ways around to get people over and trick fans into going where they want them to go. Like, they can't just take a direct route of, like, this is the guy we want you to like, because at the time they wanted you to like Roman, and they're like, no, we like this little guy Daniel Bryan over here. and they were like, "No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to like that guy. Like he's got to be in the lower to mid card." And they're like, "Nope, that's our dude. Fuck Roman Reigns." And they're like, "No, this is what Vince likes. You got to like him because this is Vince's guy." And they're like, "No, we're not doing that." But now they've backdoored him in to where eventually he'll be the babyface they wanted, and they only had to give him the championship for 1,080 days or whatever the hell it is. But I'm I was skeptical for a long time. I thought he was a lost cause. I didn't think they were going to figure it out, but they figured it out, and now he's one of the biggest stars they've ever had. So, um, so this week we're not going to go into it because I'm sure nobody watched it, and I'm sure Shane's going to watch it. But this week's Dark Side of the Ring was Terry Gordy. It was a good episode. It was sad as hell, but if you get a chance to watch it, watch it. I do have to say, I'm probably looking forward to this week's episode more than any other this season. Brutus Beefcake next week. That should be fun. It will probably be the only one that will really compete with Buff as far as just crazy. It'll be like Buff, Brutus, and Janetti will all just kind of fight for that top three weirdest, wildest episodes of Dark Side. So be on the lookout for that. So that brings us to what we've already kind of dipped into a couple times here, but we haven't officially went to our segment of the week, which is this week's Rock Bloodline Cody Seth update. So Monday night you had Cody cut his promo. Heyman ends up coming out. Now we've covered here, like I'm a Cody fan, but sometimes his delivery annoys me. Sometimes I feel his delivery isn't appropriate for the moment and the message he's trying to convey. And I think Monday night was definitely one of those times where by this point, we're getting closer to WrestleMania. We need to start getting like heated and pretty passionate about some things and personal. And he has this condescending delivery that's very wrestling promo-y and very I don't know. I usually like most of his promos, but like when I watched that Monday night, I was tickled to see Paul Heyman coming out there. I was like, all right, let's see if Heyman can save this because I don't like how it's gone so far. And then once Heyman got there, because I love the interaction with him and Heyman last year leading into WrestleMania. And Heyman cried, and it was so great because Heyman stepped out of character, had the crowd chanting his name. Thank you, Paul, for helping Dusty at one point. And Heyman's so good that by the end of the same promo where they were chanting his name and he was crying, he flipped the whole thing on its ear, and they were all booing his booing his ass as he left the building, which is just, I mean, you gotta love it. So we'll start with Wes and make our way around. What was your take on the Raw promo from Cody?
I mean, you kind of put the nail in the coffin. I mean, big Cody fan. You guys know that. And I kind of agree with what you're saying with his style and his tone and the way he was. I mean, we're getting close to Mania. We need that pop. We need that anger. That this is me finishing the story. And but at the same time, I'm like, but I think that's what we're expecting. And I don't know if we noticed. I mean, he's in like a dark suit this time. Usually wears more like a lighter color. I don't know if that was like kind of like a hillish, if you will, type Cody Rhodes promo. But I mean, even if it was, I mean, what he was saying wasn't heel. It wasn't anger. It wasn't, not giving a fuck basically, and just breaking all rules and all the things you believe in. I mean, I have to agree as well with Paul Heyman. I mean, he helped that whole situation between him and Cody. That was a great promo between them two. Once he got out there, it was great. But I mean, yeah, I was kind of disappointed, and I hate to say that, but I was disappointed.
And at this point, right at the moment, like I don't feel like it's really important to Cody to win the title. Like, finish the story sounds like a shitty catchphrase at this point, and something they've just been saying for 2 years now that really doesn't mean anything. It's just something he says. It's like it's his. Do you smell what the Rock's cooking? It's just like it really doesn't mean anything to me. It's just like, finish the story. It's been said so much, and the way he's dropping it in these promos, he's not doubling down on like, I want the title, blah blah blah. I mean, yeah, there was the whole, I can't hand it to my dad, and I got to hand it to my mom, and cried, that whole debacle from last week. But just like, I just mean, I don't know. I think we've kind of lost the plot on what the whole finishing the story thing meant to start with, and now it's just, that's Cody's catchphrase. He wants to finish the story, and I think half the people, if you ask the people that don't follow it religiously week to week for the last 2 years, like, what story is he finishing? They're like, oh, WrestleMania, wrestling Roman. I don't know. These the
A
story.
tale of two manias.
He's always talking about those stories finishing. Tyler, what do you think?
Y'all are warming my heart right now. I just say that this is as the resident Cody hater in here. That's just been my criticism of Cody most of the time. I don't think he talks like a real person talks. Like, it feels very. It sounds sometimes like he's reading off a script, or it's just. I don't know. If you're pissed off, you just don't talk that way. Like, you just don't deliver it in the way that he does. He just. And I was live tweeting this whole thing, and I mean, you can think I'm a hater or whatever, but I mean, that's just been my criticism of Cody Rhodes going back to AEW, and that's why, like, in my heart of hearts, I truly believe that when he does finish the story, I don't think the whole fan base is going to stick with him 6, 7, 8 months into this thing. I think unless he gets that edge and changes his style and delivery up a little bit, I think some people are going to be like, yeah, I'm kind of getting sick of this guy quick. Because I'll be honest with you, when he comes out and cuts a promo, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. But that's just my perspective on it.
Fighting that lisp hard lately. Yeah, you're right, Jay. There is that. Shane?
I felt like the build to Mania with all this has been very, very, very good. But it could be great. Because think back to post Rumble, Raw, SmackDown when The Rock comes out. We didn't have any comedy. That was serious. Cody was trending on X/Twitter, thank you, Wes, all across that weekend. Now we've gotten into this, and we've got Diarrhea Dwayne from Seth. We've got The Rock with tons of comedy, and now Cody has fallen victim with LDS, little dick syndrome. I'm sorry. These aspects, and Cody is just as guilty now of it, have made it boring to me. When they get heated, when they get passionate, when they talk about their families, when they talk about, yes, oh my God, like you said, the title that is on the line, I feel like in the last 3 weeks, it's been so much Rock and Cody. It's like, wait a minute, isn't Reigns the one with the belt that he's wrestling? When you said we've lost track of the plot, we've also lost track seemingly of who holds those belts and has. But yeah, Cody with that LDS, I know it pleases a lot of people. Oh, little Dick Center. I cringe. I'm like, we've had so much diarrhea and LDS and rot with comedy. But again, the emotional, serious stuff has been very, very good. If we wipe out some of that stuff and just stay on track, man, and it's still going to be very, very good. I just feel like this could go as an all timer if we didn't have some of that eye rolling, face palming stuff involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think they get off track. Like, Cody, like, his brand is, the guy who picks the kid up out of the crowd who's dressed like him and does the entrance with him, and he stays and takes
Mhm.
selfies with everybody. Like, I can't, like, when they did Memphis, I got a ton of friends in Memphis who are in and out of the wrestling business. And after that show, there was at least 20 people on my timeline who were at the Memphis show who had selfies with Cody because he went around ringside after they went off the air and took pictures with everybody and their kids and everything. And so that's his brand, and I think that's how he probably can stay over. But you can't be that guy. Now you're out here saying little dick syndrome. Because what happens when that little, the 8-year-old kid that was dressed like you in the aisle with you goes to school Monday and gets his parents get a call because he told some kid he had a little dick syndrome because Cody said it. You don't need it. It doesn't add anything. It just makes it, like you said, it to the average person, it's like he's stooping to their level. We're knocking the Rock for it. Now we're doing it too. But kind of to Tyler's point, like when I heard Cody Rhodes may show up in WWE, and then he showed up at WrestleMania, my first thought was like, he's going to be a hell of a heel up here because he's the guy that went away and he started the competition. They could even play on that if they have to. But the way he comes out and he suits and it's like he tries to talk above his own head. Like there's words he says like, Cody, I don't know if you really know what that word means, dude. Why are you talking to wrestling fans in terms that they clearly don't understand? And you're trying to sound smarter than what you are. Like you're doing a wrestling promo. Like Dusty Rhodes didn't come out here and use college words in a wrestling promo because he was the common man. He was the dream. And I thought, man, he'll be a hell of a heel. But then when he got over with the crowd, I was like, well, okay, I guess go with that. But you can see the shift already slowly starting to happen. And I think eventually, if he wins the title and he finishes that story, God forbid, let's hope, I think down the line, he's going to be a real heel because you imagine that delivery like y'all were just talking about, like Wes alluded to, both everybody. You take that promo from Monday night, that kind of condescending tone and the way he dresses, and you let him trot Brandy out there with him because she's a heat magnet. That's kind of what started him down the wrong path in AEW. He's going to be a major heel at some point because, like, if somebody who hadn't seen any of this stuff in a while, if you said, hey, at WrestleMania, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins are going to wrestle The Rock and Roman Reigns, who do you think are the baby faces and who do you think are the heels? Seth's a shitty baby face. I mean, the crowd likes singing along with his music or whatever, but he comes off more like a heel. He looks like a heel. He dresses like an idiotic heel. And,
He laughs like a heel.
he laughs like a heel, like a jackass. And you put him and Cody together, they look like a pair of heels. And of course, you always assume The Rock's going to be the baby face, and people are starting to like Roman Reigns. So I could see this whole thing, turning on its ear, and maybe by next WrestleMania you could have this match again, but with the roles completely swapped. So at the end of this promo, because we're dragging this part out, and that's partly on me. Paul Heyman sets up a meeting with Cody Rhodes. The tribal chief has invited him to SmackDown for a one-on-one, and he has his word. He has the tribal chief's word that none of the bloodline will be there. This will be one-on-one. And which, I mean, is just foreshadowing, like, you see this coming 100 miles off in the distance, blindfolded. Like, well, okay, clearly we know how this is going to happen. Now, again, like I've said before, a lot of the stuff they're doing in many ways is in wrestling lure is predictable, but you don't know which way you're going to play it. Because my first thought was, okay, Roman has given his word that no one from the bloodline will be there. The Rock's going to pop up and attack Cody or something along those lines, and then Roman's going to be like, hey, what are you doing? I gave my word, and now you're making me look like an asshole, and it gives you more friction between them. Or it can play out the way it did, and they go out and they have their little one-on-one in the ring. And I mean, it pains me to say this, but Roman got the better of that exchange, in my opinion, from Friday night. And then, as far as the promo part of it, then of course here comes Solo, here comes Jimmy, and here comes Seth, and here comes Jay, and we have the big standoff, which was a great ending. I've seen people complaining about it online. They're like, oh, they just ain't doing nothing. They're trying to keep them apart. Like, well, yeah, because they're not supposed to wrestle to WrestleMania. All this is about keeping them together while keeping them apart, dummy. Like, if we watched them fight each other every week from now to WrestleMania, why do we need to see WrestleMania? Wrestling fans don't understand wrestling, less than anybody, it seems, nowadays. But so, what was everybody's take on Friday night with the one-on-one promo with Roman and Cody?
Well, I mean, I think it was way better than Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, we had different things. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I thought about, like, okay, so what if somebody comes in from either side? Hell, what if Seth Rollins comes in and attacks Roman?
Yeah, and
and you're like,
Cody's like, hey,
like, bro, I thought, the biggest thing from that promo is, I think it was from Cody, and it's just a small thing, but at the same time, it's a bigger thing. He said, if you're promising me that there's nobody here or the bloodline isn't here. Nobody's coming out. I promise you the same thing.
Yeah, that was a big tell.
And I was like, well, somebody's coming out. But I mean, it was good. I mean, I have to agree. I mean, Roman did get the one up on him. I think Cody did a better promo during that than Monday, for sure.
Oh yeah, it was better than Monday. If the whole thing's scripted, they let the heel get the upper hand on the baby. Like the heel came out, he hit some heavier lines on Cody and made Cody look kind of dumb more times than Cody made him look dumb, and that's kind of ass backwards as far as heel and babyface roles.
But I mean, at the same time, I mean, I was expecting. I mean, I know you were saying, Rock coming to get Cody. I was expecting Seth to do something. To be honest with you, at the same time, I thought the ending was perfect. It kind of gave me like the Avengers vibes, if you will. Like, they come out and like, you're thinking, oh, well, Cody's about to get jumped, and then, you got Jay over there, then you got, Seth over here, and then it just slowly close in. I love the hoodies, by the way. They're zipped up, got the hoodies on, and I thought it ended well. I mean,
it was the perfect ending as far as I'm concerned. That standoff's what you needed. It's just a matter of how you're going to get there. Tyler?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a much better Cody promo than Monday. But yeah, I mean, it was a good exchange. They got their shots in, built it up a little bit more, and then I thought it was cool that you look at Cody and you think he's the guy that plays by the rules all the time, and is going to be this this ultimate baby face, like this John Cena like baby face that would never go against his word, but he kind of knows how the bloodline is, so he brought his guys with him. So I thought that was cool, because you can easily see like, oh, he's an idiot. He came by himself. He gets jumped, and then everyone's laughing. But yeah, he brought his guys. They had the stare down, and yeah, I thought that was. I have nothing bad to say about Friday. Thought it was good.
Tommy Todd says, when Cody said, I'm not a top number 2, I'm the one. That was a lame line. Well, I can't argue with that. That was not his best. I was waiting for when he kept saying number 2 that they were going to, go there.
I thought the same thing.
If The Rock had been there, they would have. But anyway, Shane.
I can't add much more. There were just two things I thought was funny in the last week or so. One, that the heel actually wins in the promo battle. When's the last time that ever really happened, especially with a situation of this magnitude? And I also find it funny, not that he got hurt, but I find it funny that Darby Allin breaks his foot before he goes to climb Mount Everest.
Yeah, everybody thought he was going to get killed on Mount Everest. Then he gets injured wrestling before he goes. J-Dub says, no one can seriously buy that Jimmy and Jay are going to not have each other's back at the end of this. The twist is so obvious. I think the question, and I don't think there's any question that they won't end up back together. I think the twist will be, which way do they go? Does Jay rejoin Jimmy as part of the bloodline as heels, or does Jimmy join Jay? Although we've kind of already played that out both ways now, so I don't know. You can do that, but I don't think it has much effect as it would have, since we've already flirted with that in the past.
I think that happens after like the complete bloodline, if that were to happen. If that makes sense.
I was going to say, like, when Roman loses, like, when I think he loses, I mean, I'll be pleasantly surprised if he doesn't. But if he does, I'm just curious to see what happens to the bloodline at all. Like, that's really the intrigue there, is to figure out if the bloodline is even going to be a thing after that.
I mean, I don't think in its current incarnation. I guess the question is, do you get Jimmy, Jay, and Solo together as brothers, as some kind of trio, as heels? I don't know that it works as baby faces with Solo involved, but people love Jay, so I don't really know that it's beneficial to turn him back heel, because it's hard to get somebody as over as he is now. I think it would be easier to turn Jimmy baby and have them together. I think people would just be happy to see them back together and could roll with that. And then, Solo does his own thing, or Heyman sticks with him. I don't know, but no, I don't think you'll see once Roman loses. I don't think you'll see the current incarnation of the bloodline, no matter how it goes. But Let's see what we
And
got here.
history is being made
Back and stuns the
at
Rock.
WrestleMania. I'm sorry.
For Christ's sake, I hope that doesn't happen. Fuck. I mean, we're already doing enough of putting these old fucks over more than they need to be. There's not a lot of mileage left in Stone Cold. We don't need to go there, but
We know it's gonna be Gold Dust. Come on.
it's gonna be
Well,
Goldberg. That's the twist.
history is being made at WrestleMania. Brother versus brother, only the fourth time ever. Owen and Bret Hart, Matt and Jeff Hardy, Jay and Jimmy Uso, and Kane versus Undertaker.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's not as unique as they want us to think. Dustin comes back. Well, I don't know about that. Tony Khan, I don't think he's going to do him any favors these days, but I could be wrong.
Can you imagine if he did, though? Like, it's been a one-sided deal with everything that AEW, WWE have worked together on.
Well, hell, I mean, there's like talks that fucking MJF is gonna come out. Like,
Yeah, but
all
if he
these damn
does, it's going to be
rumors.
because he's signed with them. It ain't going to be because he's on loan from AEW. And I'm convinced that the rumors were true that MJF had re-signed either right before he won the title or right after he won the title, because I don't think they put that much time and effort into him not being locked down. But look who we're talking about. Maybe he thought if he put the title on him and pushed the shit out of him, that would get him to sign, and it didn't. I don't know. Maybe if they'd offered to give AEW some Sting footage for the final match, they would have loaned him Dustin, because it's not like they're doing anything at all with Dustin at this point. So, all right. So we're an hour in. We've got our lead topic, the favorite faction. But let's dip over for just a moment, do a quick little conversation on some comedy real quick, because this kind of relates to kind of wrestling too, and kind of back to what we were talking about Goldberg earlier. So I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and Mark Maron and Bobby Lee were kind of having a discussion about what makes a good comedian. Is it the number of tickets they sell or the quality of their content? And Mark's kind of alluding to like a lot of the stadium comedians, which most people assume he's referring to Kreischer. And he even said in a recent interview that Kreischer called him out on it. And he's like, no, I wasn't talking about you, but I don't know how many other comedians are selling out stadiums besides Bert Kreischer's. I think he was, and he's just trying to not own it. But I guess what he's saying is like, okay, so who's a better comedian, Bert Kreischer, who's selling thousands of tickets in a stadium, or a guy like Dave Attell, who's been around forever, one of the best joke tellers to ever live, but he still does clubs and theaters and things like that. What's more important? And I don't expect anybody to have a definitive answer on this, because number one, good comedians are subjective, and it all depends on where you stand as far as what's more important, the quality of the content or the tickets sold. But I just want to hear everybody's opinion. So we'll start with Wes.
I mean, in reality, it's just like for me, for instance, I like guys who have good material, who are funny, hilarious, and I mean, I think it's taste. I think it's material. I really do. I mean, yeah, you can sell thousands and sell out stadiums, but at the end of the day, are you funny? You might have a fan, like you might have many fans, all this, but I mean, I think it's more about, I mean, like you said, I mean, like I would rather sell out like a small arena and have good material instead of selling out and having all this money and I'm not even funny, because that's just me. I mean, I think to me it's more about material than selling out. But
Tyler, do you have any opinion on this topic?
Yeah. I got to thinking. I mean, it's a tough question to answer, but I'm gonna have to. I don't, and I'm not saying it's like all encompassing and definitive, but I would say tickets sold, because just to like make it a wrestling standpoint, because I'm not a comedian or a comedy guy, but like while people might not be happy The Rock came back or doing all this stuff, every time The Rock, I think every week The Rock has showed up to SmackDown, the place is sold out. So, I mean, if you're if you're selling a lot of tickets, somebody out there really likes your stuff. Now, I mean, that's not to say that everybody who sells out stadiums has the best, is just the best comedian like overall. They probably just have the best marketing or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a combo of the both. I mean, I wouldn't want to be just defined by like, wow, I put a lot of asses in seats, but my jokes suck. So yeah, it's a combo of the both. But I do think tickets sold does say a lot about a comedian or any kind of performer, that people will be willing to pay their hard-earned money to sell out an arena to see you. So
Shane?
I do compare it a lot to wrestling. With Burt Kreischer, I first saw him at the Funny Farm in Atlanta, 2011, on a Sunday afternoon in front of 150 people. He killed. Second time, 2 years later, he comes to the Improv in Atlanta in front of 225. He kills. Some of the same people that I saw him with on those shows, very personal up front, then started shitting on him when he started doing stadium shows and Netflix. And I'm like, is it a lot like wrestling? When you go to the indie shows, the tape traders, YouTube, you see this guy that, oh my God, you gotta see him. You don't know who he is. Then he makes the big time, and you're like, oh man, screw this guy. I like it better when I was one of the guys in the. I hope I'm making sense here. Like when
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got the buzz on somebody, on a comedian or a wrestler or a band that most don't. I feel like you kind of have that presence of like, hey man, I know them. Like I didn't discover them, but like you don't know them. I told you about them. And then once they get to that level, and to Tyler's point, I think once a comedian hits stadium levels, we're almost like, you better entertain me for the entire 75 minutes, funny man, because of what we paid and the magnitude of this. And you know, is Kevin Hart doing 75 minutes at Veterans Field in Philadelphia funnier in front of 5,000 people, or is it funnier if he does the same set in front of 150 on a random Tuesday night with like the waiters and a few other people around? Same thing with wrestling. Best match I ever saw AJ Styles have was in Columbus, Georgia, in 30 minutes versus Jason Cross. There's your name, in front of 400 people. But has he wrestled in much bigger environments against much bigger names? Sure, subjective.
Yeah. I think it all depends on whose perspective you're looking at. As a comedy fan, as just a fan of comedy myself, I personally have never found Bert Kreischer to be particularly funny. If Bert Kreischer was playing for free in my backyard, I'd go sit in the front yard. But that's just my opinion. That doesn't mean Bert Kreischer is not funny. It means I don't find him funny. And again, comedy is subjective. There's comedians that people absolutely love that I can't stand. There's comedians I love that other people can't stand. That's me as a fan of comedy. So for me personally as a fan, I care more about the material. And I can't say good or bad. I just have to say how I feel about their material. Because again, that's how I perceive it. Now, as a guy who produces comedy shows, at this point, if you come to me and go, look, Gene, I got this guy. He's got the funniest freaking jokes. Like his material is top notch. He's hilarious. But nobody knows who the fuck he is. Like he's not going to sell one single ticket except, maybe like four if his friends from work come. But Bert Kreischer will come and sell this place out for you as a favor to me. Do you want Bert Kreischer or do you want this other guy that, he does great material? I know you don't like Bert Kreischer. You're not a fan, but which one do you want? Well, guess what? I may not enjoy his show, but best believe Gene, the producer, is bringing Bert Kreischer. And I'm gonna love every minute of it. And the other guy, he can come on, he can open for him, or he can sit and watch and learn. But I mean, that's just a fact. Like in business, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. If you're in business, the guy who sells the most tickets is the best. At that point, you don't give a shit about the material. And if you want proof of this, because there's some people going to be sitting there arguing with me, like Jay says here, quality of material, but also how you're perceived by your peers. Great is great, fame notwithstanding. Okay, from a certain level, that's true. If we're talking about just perception by your peers and all this shit. But look at comedy clubs now. One of the biggest things you will hear working comedians, and I'm talking about guys who have been on the road for years, guys who have done this for years and years and made a living at it, not weekend guys like most folks we know. are complaining because right now comedy clubs are booking these TikTok folks who aren't comedians. They're just people who came up with a funny concept, made some videos that somehow got 1 million fucking views, and they're going, "Hey, we'll give you 2 shows a night for 3 nights at our club because you got 2.2 million followers." They don't even ask them if they have a set, and these folks don't have they're not stand-ups. They've never written a set, and now people are coming to this club. They're paying $45 for a ticket on a Wednesday night for the early show, and this clowns up on stage just bullshitting because they don't have a set, they don't have material, they don't even know where to begin to write it. They just made some funny videos, people watch. Because I don't know. Me and Delbert have pondered for a year now, like, what's some stupid shit that Jenkins cousins can do that somebody might watch and share 1,000,001 times, and people could learn who we are. And we can't, between us and Delbert high out of his mind for real, we can't come up with anything stupid enough to even try to, we've come up with a couple of ideas like the whole golf course bit and all that I think would be funny, but I don't think it's going to be what gets us, to the next level. But that's just a fact. Those club owners, they don't care that these people don't have material. They don't care that they're not good working comics or, any of that shit that, comedy fans or wrestling fans care about. And to your point, Shane, you talk about, there was a time that people love Nickelback. There's people who are like, man, I was there from day one, man. They're awesome. People love that band because, albums don't become number one seller unless people are buying them. But like you said, somewhere along the way, everybody's like, man, they're lame. Screw them, man. We hate Nickelback. And now, just like, you can't find nobody that'll say they're a fan, but somebody was at some point because they sold a lot of tickets and they sold a lot of albums. And, comedy's much the same way. So at the end of the day, say all this to say it's all subjective. There's no right answer. And that's the frustrating thing about comedy is, people can hate on people all day and be like, man, that guy sucks. He ain't funny. But if you can find video of him in front of 200 people and 180 of them are laughing, or even half of them are laughing, somebody thinks they're funny. That's now we're just talking about your opinion. You don't think they're funny, and you can
Like
pick.
20 done.
Yes, yes, you can pick. Amen. But you can pick apart their material. You can take apart their joke structure or lack thereof. But if they get up there and they made somebody laugh, it is what it is. You look at, Dane Cook became one of the biggest comics in the world and was selling out stadiums, but he didn't tell jokes. It was all just spastic act outs and, acting like a nut. But if you take a transcript of what he was up there saying, there's no joke structure to it. There's no, if you're a comedy nerd like I am that has studied this for 15 years, there was no logical reason why that guy got over. But he did, so you can't argue with it. You can't knock him. But like Shane said, there was comedians that shredded that dude, tore him apart. Mark Maron brought him on his podcast and, berated him. And, it's like you can't argue with success. Now, it wasn't sustainable, so maybe there's something to be said there. But he still, made a lot of money in a short amount of time. And if it wasn't for his sorry-ass brother that stole all his money, he'd be a lot better off now than he was. Tommy Todd says, would a dry bar style comic ever sell out 40 to 50,000 seats? I don't think so, because of their cleaner material in this world's mindset and society. There's clean comics that, Jeff Foxworthy's a billionaire from clean comedy. There's ones that succeed, but your average dry bar style comic may not, but it's not because they're clean necessarily. It's because people don't know who they are. But that's the loophole these TikTok comics have found. It's not all TikTok. I just say that as a generalization. Is it used to be that you had to catch the eye of, somebody to put you in front of people, to put you out there and get you noticed. But once there became an avenue where you could get yourself out there and get yourself noticed, and you cut all them people out of the deal, it was a game changer because there's just all kinds of strange things that are, catching on. It's like that dude, that Southern grandpa, he came and did that show with us, and he was an exception to the rule because I ain't gonna lie, part of the reason I booked him was almost kind of a dick move. Was like I did it, one, because he had 1.2 million followers on his TikTok, and I thought he would sell some tickets. And two, I was like, I want to see what this guy does when we put him on stage. Either he's going to do well or he's going to eat shit. And either way, the tickets are already sold, and I'll be entertained. But he had a good set. He had a really solid set. It was like his third or fourth time ever being on stage, and he was great. He did a really good set. He's got a lot of potential. So, you can't make that blanket statement about all the TikTok comics, because some of these people, they use that as an opportunity, but then they take advantage of the opportunity and they work hard and they make something of it. And more power to them, because I wish we could find, the answer to that, to where more than, 30 to 60 people are seeing us at Atomic Johnny's once a month. And hopefully we'll get there. We got to get to the main event, though. We got to get to what we promised. The main topic of tonight's show: your favorite faction ever in wrestling. Which, one of these is going to be kind of anticlimactic. I'm not going to say who, but he may shock us. He may surprise us. He may be like, Dangerous Alliance, 1992, son. But Wes, what you got?
So, we talk about, our favorite factions. And, of course, in history, you've got, just from my age limit, NWO, you got DX. For me, personally, just growing up in the wrestling business and with the members at the time, dude, Evolution was one of my favorite factions.
That's
because,
fair.
number one, I love the name. Number two, because you had the past, the present, and the future of wrestling.
Yeah.
They built Randy Orton so well, in my opinion, being a legend killer. He's RKO and Sergeant Slaughter one week, Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. He's my. And then you have Ric Flair teaming up with Batista, so past and future together. And having a great, I think, tag team run, in my opinion. And then you have Triple H, of course, just running it and holding the title for a good bit and stuff like that. I loved Evolution. I thought they were a great faction overall. I don't want to be that guy like NWO or like DX, but like I was like, man, Evolution was great. And I even loved like after Evolution. Like, okay, so Randy leaves, they betray him after he beats somebody, for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then Triple H didn't betray him. And then you have Batista wins the Rumble, gets to choose which title to fight for, and he chooses Triple H. I think the overall Evolution like storyline alone too is really good. So
Good call, Tyler.
Wes stole mine, man. I promise you, I came with Evolution as mine. You might have thought I was going to say the Bloodline, I guess, but
I didn't think there was any doubt. I thought it was like, okay, Tyler likes the Bloodline. Shane.
love the Bloodline. But yeah, man, Evolution, man. They were back when I was younger. They were so cool. I was young, probably I don't know, fourth, fifth grade, probably. I asked my mom to buy me one of those paid late and made shirts because I didn't know what it meant. wouldn't buy that for me, but man, they had one of the coolest. They had like the coolest entrance theme, and that's back when I liked all the faces and stuff. But I'm like, man, these dudes are cool. Like they come out to that, like that's one of the best entrance themes of all time. Like when that clock would start, yeah, like when you hear the clock start ticking, and then like man, that song hits, and it was like Motorhead or whatever. Man, that was awesome. But yeah, like Wes said, man, all those guys went on to be major stars. You had young Randy Orton, who was a legend killer, and punting Mick Foley down the steps and doing all that kind of stuff. But then he finally won the world title, and you're like kind of happy for him. And then you see Triple H do the thumbs up, thumbs down. You had the younger Batista before he was a big star. So everybody, well, Flair and Triple H were already made, but like they made like. These guys were main event stars. Batista and Randy Orton are, we can get in the Hall of Fame debate. I think they're both Hall of Famers later on down the road for sure. And they got their start in that faction that kind of, launched their careers into what they ended up being. So, Yeah, Evolution still really cool. I was disappointed that in the reincarnation in Birmingham when they actually I skipped out on that show and I was mad when I heard Evolution's music hit and then Birmingham no pop for them. Like nobody popped for the music. I'm like, do these people not know who Evolution is? That's like crazy. But yeah, that's definitely the coolest one in my book. But yeah, Wes stole it. Bloodline
Okay,
number two.
Shane, if you're about to say Evolution, I beg of you, please pivot right now to someone else.
Well, thinking about this all week, it was a tough call because I was going between the LWO, the Dudes with Attitudes, the Dungeon of Doom, the Stud Stable. But
You
while I
landed
would
on
agree
Los Periquas.
that Evolution is great, but for Evolution to be here, we had to have the Four Horsemen first, right? For the Evolution name to even be there. And I know it maybe wasn't the first faction. You start getting into that Freebird Devastation Incorporated, stuff. But for me, man, I mean, I liked all. I even liked the Paul Roma days. Sorry, of the Horsemen, but y'all, I know that surprised you. That original four though, Flair, Ole, Arn, Tully with J.J. Dillon right in the mix, and that faction's only as good as who you're working. And when you're working Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors. I mean, the Horsemen were so hate. I don't know if that's the reason they created Great American Bash. I know Dusty wanted to create kind of a music touring schedule, but without the Horsemen at the forefront in all those shows, I'm not sure those things would have happened because you had to have people. We go back to comedy, what we were talking about. People wanted to see them buy a ticket, either to love them or see them get their ass beat. And so like for Tyler and Wes, when you guys brought up Evolution, I love that in '03 because Flair's there, the past, Triple H, the present. And then what we saw, it really, it helped launch Randy and Batista into household names, even more so. And I know for Flair that had to be pretty cool because he's like, man, I'm a lot older than these guys. But they're adapting the suits and ties and the limo and the women, like you said, the paid lady made shirts. I mean, it felt like almost like the Four Horsemen 20 years later, hence the name.
Yeah, I mean, you had Flair representing the Horsemen, Triple H representing DX, two huge
Hmm.
factions of their day, and then they come together for something new. J Dub says DX, so hope he didn't take that as an insult when Wes said, "I don't want to be that guy that says DX," but Uh, so real quick before I say mine, you kind of made a good point that I was going to lead in with this, but the rest of the show went a little longer than I thought it would. But I'll quickly throw this out there. Um, so you said, so the Horsemen, I kind of consider the Horsemen the original faction to some degree. Yes, there is an argument to be made for the Freebirds, but like, where do you differentiate? I mean, you're an old dude like me. The difference between a faction like the Horsemen and DX and a stable, which was more just a manager's group of wrestlers that their only real link was they were managers. Like you had Devastation Incorporated, the Heenan family, and on down the line, all the different managers you can name, Gary Hart's various incarnations of
Hmm.
groups. So I was like, well, so when you're considering factions, like, do I consider the Heenan family? Do I consider, the Dangerous Alliance? Were they a faction, or were they just the guys that Paulie dangerously managed? I don't know. We could sit and debate that all night. I'm not sure. Um, Four Horsemen was top of the list for me, but I had a sneaking suspicion that someone else might say that. So I guess my second choice would be not just the tag team, but the 1997 version of the Hart Foundation with Brett, Owen, Neidhart, and Brian Pillman.
Oh,
Is a big favorite of mine. So that's going to be my pick for tonight. So we got two Evolutions, Four Horsemen, and Hart Foundation. I think those are pretty solid picks.
and we made it come full circle because the only person still alive from the Hart Foundation is Bret Hart. You tried your best, Goldberg, but
That's right.
I mean, can it be fair? I mean, if we're talking about factions, can I give a number two just for comedy and stuff? So, dude, the second run of DX with just Triple H and Shawn was fantastic, in my opinion. Because you had Shawn
But at
Michaels.
that point, you're a tag team.
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah,
But
but at the same time, dude, like the comedy of that. So you had like Triple H being this like R-rated kind of guy, while back in old DX it was Shawn who was that kind of guy, and was like worse than Triple H to a degree. But then you had Shawn in the newer generation of DX. It was just like, oh no, don't do. Like I don't know. I thought it was great.
yeah, having Christian Shawn in DX and that element you just mentioned was a lot of fun. And, because as it started, you're like, how are they going to get around new Shawn's, beliefs here? But they worked it perfectly. I got to admit, Shane stole some of my thunder here because I was 99.9999% sure he was going to say Four Horsemen. So my initial answer as a joke was going to be Dungeon of Doom. But then Shane rattled off every shitty faction that had ever existed. And the only one I could think of that he didn't name was Los Pericuas. That's why I went ahead and threw it in right then instead of using his mind, because no one would ever say that was their favorite faction.
You know who I thought had potential? League of Nations. I know the name was corny to a lot of people, but the people in that group, I thought it had potential.
Until they let him get squashed by the League of Old Fucks at WrestleMania that year.
I can't believe nobody named the Spirit Squad in this whole deal, man. Whatever happened to them? I mean, well, Dolph Ziggler became Dolph Ziggler.
I was going to say, one guy worked there for 30 years, and now he's doing indies.
Yeah.
I think one of them's working at Chili's or something. I don't know about the rest of them, but Ziggler sure held on longer than anybody thought he would.
Right. What a dumb team.
That's a topic for another day too. And just save your answers, because this will turn into another 45-minute podcast. But a lot of people have said over the years that they feel that Dolph Ziggler was the modern day Shawn Michaels and feel like he should have been pushed accordingly and should have been a huge, huge star. And I don't, but we'll talk about that another time. Because that could either be a 2-minute conversation or a 2-hour conversation, and I'm getting worse at predicting things, because I'm ashamed to say, I mean, I picked out a bunch of factions to put pictures of on the thumbnail. I didn't even think of Evolution. I flat out forgot they existed until you two mentioned them. So, but that's not my go-to era of. I was kind of out on wrestling at that point. I mean, I wasn't out on it, but I wasn't that into it. I kept up with it because it's just something I've always done, but I didn't really give a shit one way or the other.
That's back when I thought it was the only real thing on TV. That was my generation's Four Horsemen.
See, that's the fun thing to me is when dealing with younger people, because there's eras of wrestling that I don't give a fuck about, and to them that's the glory days. They're like, oh, this shit was great, and I'm like, I didn't even watch most of that, dude. Then when I talk about what's my favorite part, and they're like, that's before my time. I tried to watch it, but it was really boring. And it's like, what? But I get it, because when I talk about my favorite stuff in the 80s, there's guys older than me like, well, that shit in 85, 86 was bullshit back in the 70s. That was when it was real. That's when it's good. So it's all what you grew up on. Because
you imagine 15 years from now, how do you not like the Jericho Appreciation Society?
Exactly. And I'm going to punch whoever's making a case for the crap they're doing in AEW. Because there's some young kid. This is the glory days for them. And just like you said, one day they're going to be like, man, I remember when it was good back when the Jericho Appreciation Society. And,
they used to take on the Blackpool Combat Club.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it when there was 26 titles. I liked it when everybody that came to the company had a belt on. I mean, now they only got 12. I mean, God damn. I mean, how's everybody going to get a belt if you only got 12 titles? But, I mean... Holy! I mean that definition of the Continental title earlier this week. They were like, in case you're confused about the Continental title, count yourself amongst all wrestling fans. But here's Tony Khan's explanation, and there's this little clip. We've separated. Originally, it was this, and then we combined the three. But now that Okada won, we're going to take the three apart again, and now the Continental title is just his own belt. It's like, so you got a Continental title, an international title, the AEW title, and multiple...
The Oceanic title.
The Oceanic. What are we doing?
The global tag team belts.
and then they defend the ROH titles randomly on AEW shows, so you got all those belts in the mix. Because one of the Continental triple threat title. That was the ROH title was in the mix with that. Who can keep up with all that or give a crap?
Tony Khan looks like he's playing like my GM mode or something sometimes.
Dude, it's like
It's
he's
actually more
playing
by universe. You know what I'm
it's
saying?
like
he
he's
just
playing
has
with
creative.
It's like he's rolling one of those dice, like those Dungeon and Dragon nerds or whatever. It's just like, all right, we rolled a 4. That means there's going to be 4 championship matches on this Dynamite. All right, we rolled a 12, so it's going to be a 12-way ladder match, and Hook's going to win. So figure that.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, that guy! I swear, he's going to be studied at length someday. There's going to be fans of this era, but there's also going to be people going, "How did that happen?" And they're like, "Well, he was the son of a billionaire, and if you have enough money, you can put anything on TV."
He's Herb Abrams with a budget.
Yeah, you can't say without the Coke problem. Just a budget. Well, all right, guys, it's been another fun show. I'm going to run the ads, and we'll see you, all the wonderful people that are listening and watching, we hope, next week. And I'll see you guys next week, and we'll have something else fun to talk about next Sunday night right here on the Main Event Comedy Podcast.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
50% 1980s Saturday Morning Wrestling, 50% Mystery Science Theater 3000, 100% not as good as either one. The Outlaw Wrestling Federation presents OWF Worldwide Wrestling. Please join me, broadcast Bob Anderson, and my co-host Whitey Jenkins as we call some of the weirdest, wildest, and wackiest wrestling action from the nicest backyards, bingo halls, county fairs, and volunteer fire departments across these United States and around the world. Each and every Thursday, only on YouTube. For more, go to officialowf.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.